You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
We need to wait for our turn to get here. Now we can start.
We will call the meeting of the Branford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is Thursday, October 17th, 2019. I'll introduce members of the commission and staff. To my far right, Commission Member John Lust. Next to John, Commission Member Joe Chadwick. Next to Joe, Commission Member Joe Viuzzo. Turning the corner, Commission Member Fred Russo. Next to Fred, Commission Member Paul Higgins. To my left, Commission Member Marcy Pelusi. Our staff this evening, we have to my far left, Assistant Planner Rich Stecker. Next to Rich is our Town Attorney Danielle Bercury, and next to Danielle is our Town Planner Harry Smith, and our Clerk Recording Secretary in the corner is Michelle Martin. I'm Chuck Anders, Chair, and I'll ask our Secretary to read the notice of public hearing.
The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of a public hearing to be held on Thursday, October 17th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the Branford Fire Headquarters, 45 North Main Street, Branford, Connecticut, to consider the following. 1. Application number 19-9.1, zoning map amendment to change designation from BL, limited business, to BL-HR, BL hybrid rear, for property located at 49, 81 through 111, 131 Commercial Parkway, and 102 North Main Street. Chris Shapiro, applicant, 49 Commercial Parkway, LLC, Hamilton, Branford, LLC, Branford Property Development, Rita Ann Sachs, owners. Item number 2, or application number 2, number 19-9.2, zoning and regulation amendment to amend section 4 of the zoning regulations to create a BL-HR, BL hybrid rear zoning district. Chris Shapiro, applicant, 49 Commercial Parkway, LLC, Hamilton, Branford, LLC, Branford Property Development, Rita Sachs, owners. Item number 3, application number 19-9.3, special exception for an accessory structure, a barn, on property located at 3 Elms Road. Peter Custer, if I said that correctly, applicant and owner. Item number 4, application number 19-9.4, special exception to establish a parking lot for car storage for property located at 339 West Main Street, 339 West Main Street, LLC, care of Jeffrey Branford, applicant and owner. Item number 5, application number 19-8.4, special exception for excavation, grading for an accessory structure, garage, for property located at 30 School Street, the Peter Henschel Revocable Trust, care of Peter Henschel trustee, applicant, and owner. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard and written communications will be received. A copy of the application is on file in the Planning and Zoning Commissioner's office at the Planning and Zoning Department, 1019 Main Street.
Thank you, Marcy. We have, I believe, 5 public hearings scheduled for this evening. Some of them may be open and continued, but we'll follow our normal format for public hearing, which is the applicant will go first, makes presentation. After the applicant gives his presentation, we turn it over to the staff to summarize the staff report and open it up for questions by the commission. After that, we open it up to the public for public comment. We ask you to come forward, state your name and address for the record, make your comments. And after that, we allow the applicant to respond to any of the public comments. We may or may not close the public hearing depending how it goes. With that, we'll turn to our first item, which is the Peter Henschel Revocable Trust for 30 School Street in Stony Creek, a special exception for excavating and grading. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
Members of the Commission, my name is Peter Henschel. I'm the applicant and the owner for this proposed project. I'm the applicant and the owner for this proposed project, which entails a special exception for excavation and grading for an accessory structure, which is a garage being proposed. The project's located at 30 School Street in Stony Creek. It is proposed at 634 square feet. This project has already received approvals from the Zoning Board of Appeals, from the Inland Wetlands Commission, from East Shore Health District and from the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board previously. So the issue tonight is the fill area. There also in the package, I think we provided, or staff provided, a package of information on this project, which you should all have. In that, it included an overview of the project, which I've just run through with the approvals. It included a series of site photographs showing the location, the existing structure, existing residence, and the location of this proposed structure. It showed elevations of the building for the four sides of the building, a floor plan, and a site plan, a reduced site plan of Chris Golo and Associates, which Jim Preddy had developed. In addition, there was a diagrammatic site plan just to make it a little easier to see where the relevant points were of the project. And the last thing was a cross-section of the building, showing the building and the cross-sectional area where the fill is proposed, so that you can understand why that's being proposed. Just one note on the staff comments included a notation of the height of the building. We were meeting, the project will meet the limitation on size and the 15-foot limitation on height for an accessory structure. The staff notes seem to indicate that the proposal was for 14 feet. We will, in fact, be using just under the 15 feet allowable, and I think there was a 40.5 elevation ridge height that was equated to relative to the grade of the site. So first, I'll have Jim Preddy go over the actual site plan, the engineering plan, and the diagram.
Thank you. Jim Preddy, Chris Golo Engineering. Just to orient you, School Street is here. There's a common driveway here that's been known as C Strand Road. It's shown on the map on the southerly boundary. The existing house is here. Septic system. This is the area of the new garage, close to the road. Very short little driveway installation that's needed to come off of the C Strand Road. And the little area of fill that's in question is basically between the garage and the existing sidewalk. As Peter said, this has been approved by inland wetlands, which was really the focus. There is the lawn, it's mostly lawn right now, and there's an area of Phragmites in the center of the property, but when this was flagged for wetlands, the wetland area kind of goes quite a bit outside of that Phragmites. So this garage is being actually built in technically a wetland area, but there's a number of wetland enhancement areas going on, and again, that's all been worked out with inland wetlands. In fact, this is what this diagram shows. These are enhancement areas that had been historically lawn, will be planted and enhanced, and this is the area of the garage, and what's in blue here is the area of fill that we're talking about. There's a couple of very short retaining walls coming off the building to limit the amount of fill. It's basically just to keep from creating a hole up against the side of the building.
Two other drawings that we've included, which just to support what was just discussed, showing the building a little bit blown up here in the corner and the two retaining areas. And the fill is just to grade off the sidewalk so we don't go down basically into a gully or a ditch between the sidewalk and the building, which would capture snow and runoff, et cetera. So the concept is to fill that in up to the building. The foundation will be raised up about 30 inches to accept it, so that it basically looks coming off the sidewalk as though the grade was going up to the building. Obviously, it won't be sloping right onto the sidewalk. There'll be a runoff, slightly depressed runoff area to catch any runoff from that and divert it from the sidewalk. Just to further illustrate what's being done, this is an elevation of the building looking sort of across the yard, cutting the sidewalk and School Street out here, showing the fact that the grade drops off to the building there, and this is a sort of a poor indication of the granite wall, which would be built to retain, and then the fill would be behind that, running up to the building, just to give you an idea of why this is being done and how it'll look when it's done. So with that, if you have any questions, we could answer them at this time.
Thank you. Rich, did you prepare the staff report on this?
Yes, I did. I think both Jim and Peter have explained the general intent of the application, and it's for the fill, and the amount is, as they said, 24 cubic yards. Again, this is because it comes before us because it's within 100 feet of an inland wetland. So is required to be a special exception. And it did pass through all the various boards, ZBA, inland wetlands, East Shore Health, and Stony Creek Architectural Review Board. It does lie under, at 15 feet in height and 636 square feet in area, which is allowed. The grading and earth removal activity was explained. I think there's one change to the report in terms of drainage and stormwater control. And so I'm going to read that off. The town engineer stated runoff from any impervious surfaces should not adversely affect the sidewalk along School Street. And that will be included in a condition. The other simple condition would be if there's any outdoor lighting, it must adhere to the town regulations for lighting. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward application that touched all the bases, and so that's where it is.
Thanks, Rich. And so the town engineer just gave that as a separate comment, or what?
Separate comment, yeah.
Was there anything specific that was recommended, or?
No, just because I think initially it was saying that the downspouts were going to be directed to School Street, so that was inaccurate. So he just wants to
Okay.
state that, no adverse impact on School Street in terms of ice.
Great, thank you. Questions from commission members?
Is the filled area, is any of it going to be paved?
No, the filled area will be grass.
It'll be grass.
It's just going to be grass.
And what utilities are going into the garage?
The only utility is electric
Okay.
at this point.
How come you needed East Shore Health? Oh, the septic system
Right.
in the back, right. Okay.
Anything else? Any member of the public wish to comment? One more time, any members of the public wish to comment? Harry, I heard that Michelle got a phone call from someone on this?
There was. We did receive a request from, I suppose, a neighbor from the area stating that apparently they were, can you hear me? Because I don't, how's that? There we go. That apparently there were several downed trees in the Stony Creek area. I know, Peter, you're from that area. I understand a large tree fell down on School Street itself. The person did not say they could not get here. They just said that other people might not be able to make it here easily and with the wind and the general conditions and the weather. So they requested that the public hearing be opened and continued till the next meeting of the commission.
Mr. Henschel, do you have any thoughts or opinion on that?
Well, I'd certainly like to get an approval tonight. We've gone through, in terms of public input, both the ZBA and the inland wetlands, which were quite extensive and involved public hearings and the ability for the community and neighbors to comment. Some did comment. All the comments were relative, obviously, to their concerns about the project being in a wetlands area. So it seems that those things have been addressed. I frankly can't see anything that could be brought up that would, in terms of a public comment at this point, that would be apropos of your making a decision on this, but I'll leave it certainly to your discretion.
Yeah, I mean, I have some, if a tree falls on a road, I don't know why that prevented anyone from coming here.
I did go by that and saw that tree.
Before wetlands, and when they were before ZBA, they had opportunity there, and they got passed.
Right.
I did, by the way, see that tree tonight that fell, and it did go across School Street, but it certainly wouldn't have impeded anybody that wanted to come to the meeting to have a way to get out. There are multiple ways to get out.
Okay. What's your thoughts?
Was there only one person that made the call?
Yes.
Did they list other names, just 5 or 6?
No, no other
So
names
it's
are
really one
listed. just-
person?
Right.
Yeah, I'd go ahead with that.
Yes, and we haven't received any other inquiries about the application.
That's what I'm
so-
wondering, yeah.
That was yesterday, they had all day today.
I'm for voting for it
There
tonight.
was no wetland.
And it was an observation, not a, declaration of concern. It was just an observation of, you may not get peace.
Okay.
Essentially. Yeah.
So it's duly noted.
Okay. With that, do you have any other, so it sounds like there's no groundswell to keep the public hearing open on this?
No.
Okay.
Not after all the other approvals.
Right.
Just be silly, I think.
Any other questions for this applicant? Applicant have any further comments?
I'm fine with what we presented. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, we'll close this matter as a public hearing. This may be something we can take up in a bit. Brings us to item number 2, which is, well, we have item number 2, which is a map amendment, and we have item number 3, which is a text amendment to create the BL zone. We probably, I mean, they're separate applications, but we should probably start with the text.
I totally agree. I was going to say something, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So item number 2 and 3 will probably, they're related, we'll probably consider them together, but we'll start with the text. Is the applicant here on that? You may proceed, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, for the record, my name is John Mancini. I'm a principal with BL Companies, 355 Research Parkway, Meriden, Connecticut. With me is John Smits, who's the project manager for this project. My client, Chris and Jeff Shapiro, is also in the audience, and they're probably going to also have a few comments. I'd just like to walk back in time a little bit. So the first application is to discuss the text. I'm showing you the map here, but I do want to point out that today, in communication with Harry, we had a typo in the text that we wanted to. We had presented a text that was a bit confusing, and I think we wanted to make sure that we edited that, and we did get a copy into Harry. So we have that, if that wants to be put in as an exhibit.
We've already done that, and I think all the commission members received copies before the meeting.
Very good. I just wanted to make sure that was the case. So what we were basically trying to do is create this text that is this BL hybrid. And I could read all the pages that we, into the record, if you'd like, or if the commission's already familiar with it. I don't have to do that. What would you?
I think we do have the text in front of us. I think you can just summarize what you think is the most
Right.
highlights,
Okay.
perhaps.
So.
Also for the public as well, so they
Yeah,
know what's going
yeah.
on.
So we tried to keep this very orderly. So under the local business BL, we created, for the page that starts with 1.1.A, purpose, there's a section 1.1.B, and in those two sections, we added the following text. So under purpose, in addition to what was there, the word purpose, the sentence now reads, "These districts are designed to accommodate a variety of commercial functions necessary for service and community, including retail, office, banks, restaurants, and general automotive sales, and service uses," and now this is the text change, "in addition to accommodating some of the industrial uses under certain circumstances." Then item 2, the district is situated on, now the new text, properties that are not fronting US Route 1 or other high-traffic prominent commercial roads. End of new text. And then underneath the bulk requirements, we indicated a certain lot area. This is under the BLHR hybrid sheet, and that was a minimum of 4 acres. Below, as footnotes, we wrote additional requirements. The lots shall be adequately bermed and landscaped to screen parking lots from roads and view from adjacent properties. And 2, a full canopy of trees shall be placed along the frontage every 50 feet. So those are some controls we put that went with that text. So that was the first page we changed. Then under the business zone bulk standards, the only changes there were on the last page. We added to item 62, self-storage facilities, the BL hybrid line column as a special exception. Then we added under industrial uses, item 64, which was always there as assembly, manufacturing, processing. We allowed that by special exception. And then under 69, item 69, warehousing, wholesaling, business, not retail, again, allowed by special exception. And then 69A is the new item, warehousing, distribution, e-commerce, fulfillment centers. And under the IG1, IG2, and BL hybrid zone, those would all be allowed by special exception. So that is the yep. So that's what we had submitted, and then today, we were asked by Harry, do you really mean the IG1 and IG2, since that's not a zone that you're talking about? And we changed those to no. So that's the latest document you have, which I didn't have a copy of myself when I read that. Is that accurate, Harry? Yeah, okay. So, and the purpose of that on our property is that we have this unique piece of property in this BL zone that is on a dead-end street. We are not connected to Route 1. We have a 7-acre DOT parcel that's in front of us. Quite frankly, you can't even see our property, and it's currently zoned for retail, all of the things that I mentioned earlier. And so we felt that by adding these, this text to this land here along Commercial Parkway would help us be able to better get tenants to come to our site. For matter of fact, just so folks know, the site used to be zoned IG2, just like the lands that were across from us. And ironically, the very buildings we're talking about having, which are lower traffic generators, were actually on our property to the tune of 200,000 square feet before a fire burnt our buildings down. So we're really just trying to get back to where we were with those types of uses on the land. In addition, the text amendment that we gave and these types of uses Just by order of example, if you look up fulfillment, for instance, as one of the items in ITE, trip generation, the amount of trips generated, the ratio compared to a shopping center, it's about 21% the traffic. So even though each individual case would have to be approved under a special exception, which means a traffic study would have to be done, and many of those fulfillment centers, some are with more robotics than others, some are, we have a client that is in what town, John? Stratford? Milford. This client pumps out 250,000 packages a day, and they have only 130 employees. So it all depends on your conveyor system and your robotics. So we believe that these text changes are in keeping with what we think the goals should be for giving more flexibility to this land.
Do you have a definition of a fulfillment center? That's just not a term that some people may not be familiar with.
We tried to look for that, and John, did you?
Just fulfillment centers talks about IQ.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, what I'd like to turn in for as an exhibit is under the land use category, they do define how they.
High Cube Fulfillment Center Warehouse. Okay, and what's this from?
ITE, the Land Institute of Traffic Engineers.
So it's from the trip generation?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So,
Just
and just so I can, because I also printed out shopping center. So the average rate is $37.75, and the average rate there, I think, is like 18.5 or something, Marcy, on the second page. So that's, if you,
There's no traffic.
so it's,
give them to Harry first.
yeah. We have a couple more copies, John, if you want to turn those, just separate those for me if you don't mind. So I guess what we're just trying to say is it's hard to talk about the text without looking at the drawing.
Sure.
Or actually understanding geographically where we are. So I appreciate the fact that you want to do these together. In addition to that, one of the reasons for this, and I'd like to turn to a different exhibit. I'd be happy to turn these plans in as exhibits. I think when we were here and spoke to you preliminarily in a workshop, we pointed out to you that, oops. Sorry about that. We pointed out that a little over a year and a half ago, after many different private sector developers, landowners had done multiple traffic studies for lands in this area, 1151 West Main here, the commercial parkway properties going on all the way back. There's a 2-acre parcel here next to the condos. Various people had studied this, and we kept saying, to the state and to the town, perhaps we should try to get Prague to prioritize this location and have them do a project and a study. And that study was commissioned. My firm,
John, get easy.
yeah, my firm did that study, and concluded with an alignment that everybody liked, including the DOT. During that study, the DOT did review for CROG what was submitted. And these are two exhibits in that final study that the town has copies of. This is phase 1, where there would be a realignment of commercial parkway, Branford connector and Commercial Parkway would tee into it. This improvement and the improvements on the road here would be, could be around a $4 to $5 million improvement. And then the back part, that's the Commercial Parkway. This area here, when you combine the two, there would be improvements on Route 1 where 146 could be relocated opposite the diner next to the Spot Pizza, and it would create the separation and eliminate a signal. I'm only mentioning to this because this is another $6 million. So as a result, these are the types of improvements you would need in order to put the major traffic generator retailers into this site. And really, the town can't afford this, and no developer can afford this. And the destination retailers that would have come here are no longer out there and willing to come here. At one time, Home Depot was coming here. They didn't want to wait anymore for Amtrak Bridge. They built in East Haven. So we're really out of options other than to make our land more flexible for what we think is uses that would really be in keeping with what's happening around us. In fact, the uses on the property behind us, and for members of the commission to know, your package should have letters from both of those properties behind us that support this. They actually have uses that were there when the zone was IG2. They're butler-type buildings, warehousing-type buildings. And in the end, every plan that we did to test this site, you're never going to get more than 150 to 200,000 square feet of development on this property because since earlier plans were done, the regulations have changed. We have an impervious coverage of only 60% now. So we're really not talking about large-scale development here, but it's over, combined all these lands, it's over, we're 22 acres, the front DOT piece is another 7, the land behind is another 12. So you're talking about 30-something acres there that the text amendment, zone change, map change would apply to. And that's B, A, C, and D, and obviously this is the state-owned piece here, and someone could buy their land too. So.
Just a couple of questions. I appreciate the background, Mr. Mancini. One of the two studies that you showed, those were not in connection with the two-way interchange for 53, but just improvements to address
good
that.
point. So I would like to submit for the record as well. Do you have that? So in addition, in that study, there is the full interchange plan also approved by CROG and the DOT. I was only talking about the area of Route 1 and relocating and eliminating a light. There's a whole other bit of improvements that would have to happen at the highway for a full interchange to exist, and that's in the range of $12 to $15 million. Right. So that's this.
Do you have, I mean, you've appeared before, what's the State Traffic Commission called now?
OSTA.
OSTA.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion as to if you tried to get a major commercial retailer, a Home Depot or Costco or some other or something like that, at that location, would they require those type of millions of dollars of off-site improvements, do you think?
Well, they would tell you that your traffic analysis doesn't work at all.
Right.
And they would say, what are you doing to mitigate your traffic, right? So we would have to scribe these types of plans, and they would be, it would be a showstopper. There's no retailer that can afford to do those improvements. And so that is why, quite frankly, Mr. Chair, we've given up on those people. They're just not going to come to this location. At the end of the day, even if we fix the problems at Route 1 and the connector by eliminating a light, we still have half an interchange.
Right.
And the other half's never going to happen. It's just not, unfortunately.
Right. Okay. No, I understand that. I understand there's sort of two problems. One is the exit 53 to get the traffic there. But I was just concerned, even if you even if someone like Walmart's
Yeah.
there now, and, they draw people, and, they're doing okay.
Yeah.
But if you put another big retailer in there, then your opinion is that the OSTA would require lots of off-site improvements so that it would not be financially viable for someone to come in.
1,000%.
Okay?
1,000%. We've lived this. We've talked to them several times. So the last thing I'd like to say is that, as it relates to the text, is that we've been working with staff for almost a year now about how to approach what to do. About, is it a zone change? We talked about doing that. Is it an overlay? Is it a text amendment? Is it, should we be looking at this for all 4 interchanges, a certain distance away, a certain size? We've thought of all of that, and we've discussed a lot of that with Harry. We've just come to the conclusion that, and it's true, the lay of the land, it's undeniable. The lay of the land here and the fact that this is a half interchange is different than any of the other interchanges. However, we were approached this afternoon at the 11th hour by 2 attorneys that will be here speaking tonight who want something done at their interchanges too. And we agree with them. We think that language for the interchanges is a great thing, but we have a different problem here. We don't have the full interchange, and we're on a dead-end street. And we've had uses like I'm describing on this land before they were burned down. And we're just trying to get this land back to a productive state. And so we're not in support of any other applicant coming forward and doing a similar text change and a similar map. I'd be happy to even help them with that, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to just talk about our property, and we respect their opinions, but my client would like to, move forward tonight and get your feedback, and obviously we're going to hear feedback as well from the public, but that's where we're at.
Great.
So is there anything else on the text, and then we'll talk a little bit about the map? No.
Harry, do you want to do them together, or do you want to?
I'm happy doing them together.
Okay, yeah, why don't you go to the map?
Yeah,
We'll kind of-
so the map, this is part of our application. It's MA1. It's a 150 scale drawing. It shows the parcels. We label them as A, B, C, and D. The furthest one, which is furthest to the north, adjacent and behind the rest stop, is owned by Rita Sachs. The next piece is owned by Branford Development LLC. It's Ceruzzi Companies. And then my client owns these in 2 different ownership entities, Hamilton Branford LLC and 49 Commercial Parkway. In addition, as I said, there's another 7-acre parcel that is only 1/3 of it is covered, believe it or not, by the DOT commuter lot. The bulk of it has been, I'll call it, like, you pick the project on 95 and let's dump it in Branford, unfortunately. So it's been a yard for a different variety of things. And that's this piece here.
And that's owned by the state?
That's owned by the state of Connecticut. We simply are this 21-acre parcel that sits on a dead end that we are over 700 and something feet away, or 1,000 feet away, actually, from Route 1. So we don't even get the drive-by retail traffic to come through our road, because if they're not going to a destination, and Walmart is a destination, then they're not coming up that road. There's only so many people that go up to the other users, that even this area is underutilized, and I would say grossly underperforming right now. The bowling alley's closed. A lot of those businesses aren't even open. And fortunately, there are some other businesses there. So the map pretty much says it all. We just want some flexibility. what I turned into you for ITE, I'd like to bring that up again. It shows that even though maybe we don't know what the e-commerce world is in front of us is really at this point is, or what fulfillment is, the trip generation for that, in compared to what's allowed there today, is, like I said, 25% of, in comparison. And, we don't want to be penalized because we want flexibility on our land. So we're hopefully asking, Mr. Chair, and members of the commission, that you understand that we do have a unique piece of property, and history has tried to fix this problem traffic-wise. And traffic is one-to-one relationship related to this. With a half interchange, it's just, you got to understand the traffic. With a half interchange, all our traffic coming from the north and going back to the north has to use exit 54. So we are different than the other interchanges. But like I said, I believe in your plan of conservation and development that this should be considered at all the interchanges, and each one will have its unique reasons why certain things should be the way they are, and we're not in support of that.
John.
Yep. Yep. So,
Okay.
any questions, we're here to.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Mancini at this point, or should we just, okay, Harry, why don't you run through this?
Sure. The genesis, the whole idea goes back to plan conservation development. It's already been mentioned. So I think, and in your packet attached to the staff report, you've got an excerpt from section 10.3, and it has the recommendations for the different highway intersections. And one of this general idea of having a hybrid zone was to allow some flexibility in those areas adjacent to exit 53, 54, and 55 that are already zoned BL, and also add in some little more significant design standards and appearance standards to development right there as these gateways into the community. Exit 56 was considered a little bit differently in the plan because that's zoned industrial at the moment, so it already has all the industrial uses, including this handful that are proposed here for the hybrid zone. One of the difficulties was trying to figure out, between my discussions with the applicants, technical folks, and how much and what kind of design review guidelines or beefed up standards really should be part of this. You may recall back, I think, before the commission took its summer break, the end of July, we looked at the nature of this property as opposed to other properties at the highway exits 53, 54, 55 that are either right on Route 1 or on a more heavily traveled piece of road that goes up to the intersections. And this really is different. So I think the idea was to create this hybrid rear zone that would not have the full-blown design guidelines, appearance, additional criteria that would just apply to properties that are off of Route 1 that aren't on a heavily traveled road that's adjacent or connects to a highway intersection. So I think this is we've come up, I think, with a very workable approach that addresses the sort of unique aspect of these properties. So the handful of uses that are proposed, I think, are pretty, is something that would fit in well here. The only one that I had any concern about at all, not because necessarily it's not a desirable use or a use that would fit in, is the fulfillment center, because that kind of came in after the regulation amendment application was put forward. So I appreciate the additional information about the traffic generation, because I think my comment in the staff report in a nutshell was there are limitations when you get into the site plan, special exception step of reviewing a developer proposal in terms of how far you can go in terms of requiring off-site traffic improvements. It's pretty limited, it's my understanding. So really, there's a presumption that when you adopt or approve a use or add it to your zoning regulations as an allowable use, there's a presumption that you think the traffic impact is acceptable and it will work in the areas that that use is proposed for. So that's one reason why I made the comments I did, and I think this is really helpful. I don't know if you have any idea of what kind of size building. I know there's a, what my mind jumps to is the giant Amazon fulfillment center in North Haven, which is 800,000 square feet, and it's a much, much, much larger site. There's a lot of employees because it's a whole different, I understand, different model as opposed to what might happen here. So we're not, I mean, in the zoning regulation amendment, I don't think it's appropriate to request the traffic impact study and all that kind of detailed analysis. But to get an idea maybe the size of the facility, I don't have any numbers for, I don't know if you have any numbers you can provide about how much traffic you'd get, or how that would work with the roads that are out there.
Yeah, I guess I understand Harry's concern. We're a lot smaller sized than the North Haven facility. The tenant that is at that site is a big client of mine, and so we do understand. Even their facilities, Amazon, from location to location varies. If they have more room for robotics and conveyors, they do that. If they have more height for the buildings, because many times they're looking for speed, they're occupying existing buildings. In the case of North Haven, they occupied an existing huge plant, a huge facility that they built their new building on, so they were specific there, and they can do what they can. There is a fulfillment center in Meriden on Research Parkway, just a little north of where Bristol Myers is just being removed. So that one's different. It was an existing building that they went into that Amazon has. So, if it's necessary, and the commission wants to see a sketch to see what can fit on the site, we can provide that, and we can try to find a definition, in someone else's regulations for fulfillment. We were asked by our clients, our abutters, to be more, to add some of that additional language. And since we were going to be asking them for, supporting this, we thought it was only the right thing to do would be to work with them and see what they had as concerns. So I have no problem with, if that's needed and the hearing was left open, we can provide that information. We're okay with showing that the whole goal here is we know that we have to have less traffic in order to attract a tenant, because the traffic isn't going to work then, because we only have the half interchange.
What triggers the OSTA approval? The number of parking spaces?
So there's two triggers. There's the 100,000 square feet minimum. The square footage is a trigger, and/or 200 spaces or more. So there is no doubt in our minds, our goal is to have, over time, whether it's 3 buildings, 4 buildings, 10 buildings, or 1 building, we definitely hope to trigger the OSTA review. That would be the whole goal of this on 21 acres. So we can provide a sketch and do a correlating sort of one of these, like, what would it mean, just so you had it,
That might be helpful. If it might be. I mean, the other assurance is that if you triggered the OSTA, they definitely can order off-site improvements if they think it's necessary. We can't, right?
Absolutely. So there's 2 types of OSTA permits. There's the OSTA permit, and that's why these other interchanges, Mr. Chair, you'll have a control then too, because they'll be touching Route 1 directly. Right? And so you'll have that extra belts and suspenders. The DOT, in that case, that is a more stringent OSTA review, because in this case, it's the same review, but because you're on a town road first, and then you tie into the state road, they cut to the chase a little faster is the best way I can describe it. And it's categorized a little different, but they have this 1.5-year-old study that they paid for with Grog, so they know what needs to be done here. And so, trust me, we would not trigger we would not do a development that triggered those improvements because we would be creating negative income from this site. So,
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So you said it's less traffic leaving, which I understand, but can you relate the parking ratio to square footage? Like we often see in our regs, 1 space per 300 square feet. Like what would a fulfillment center be in terms of a parking ratio like that?
Morris, I think in fairness to you guys, I would do a plan that maxed out coverage at 60%. So
But there.
whether it's roof or parking, that's it.
Right, but
Right.
the relationship with the size of the building.
So it all
clearly
depends.
changes because of the
It's a
use.
great question. So some fulfillment centers rely less on a lot of employees and more on van parking, right? Because these Sprinter vans, the people that are actually operating, you hear on the radio, you know, come create a business with me, Amazon, right, for instance. The Sprinter vans, those folks are actually working, it sounds silly, but they're filling their own vans is the best way I can describe it. So they're actually playing the role of fulfillment and driving, okay? So in that case, they're not driving a car to work and leaving it there and then picking up a van and leaving. In that case, they are bringing the van and they leave it with it full. So there's a variety of ways. So what we'll do is we can use our judgment on what we're seeing and provide you with a plan that maxes out at 60%, if that helps just kind of paint the picture here. But our goal is low traffic generation, so we don't have to spend the money on the off-site improvements. There'll still be some off-site improvements, and I'll give you an example of some that will likely have to happen. So when you get off the highway now, the connector, and you make the left, I can see that the DOT would say that needs to be a double left.
Double left.
Right? I could see when you make a left into Commercial Parkway, there's a single left now. I could see them saying that has to be a double left. And as a result of making the double left on the connector, they're going to say, make the double left underneath the bridge because there's a painted island there. It doesn't need to be that way. Eradicate the paint. But when you do that, you now got to widen the beginning of Branford connector because it's got to accept 2 cars making the turn. So there's improvements that are going to be needed, even with the littlest of development that we put in with this hybrid zone.
But not 10 million or
But
whatever.
not, that's right.
Okay.
So,
Just curious, so you think coverage is what limits the site development versus parking?
yeah,
everything else,
yes,
right?
there's
Yeah.
no doubt the new regulations, especially with the lower traffic parking uses.
Right.
Because it's easy with retail, your retailers want 5 per thousand and your regs are 4 or 6. So you have to like tell them, you need to live with 4 here, right? And sometimes they listen. But with this, it's more about matching pavement, building size, and we don't mind providing you with a maxed out plan, I guess is what I'm saying. So you can see what that is. I wanted to give you the ITE because I wanted you to see this is how we have to calculate our traffic, and it's 25% of what a shopping center would be putting there. So that's a net good thing for an interchange that's only half.
Right.
So,
Thanks. Questions for Mr. Mancini? Then let's open up the public. Any members of the public wish to comment?
Good evening, Attorney Nicholas Manjone, Fasano Ippolito, Lee and Florentine, 388 Orange Street, New Haven, Connecticut. I don't want to label myself as a proponent or an adversary to the application necessarily. I just would like to make some comments. I have been retained by several property owners along the exit 56 interchange and also along the exit 54 interchange. I'd like to start first with a little bit of the language of the Plan of Conservation and Development. Your Branford Plan of Conservation and Development in section 1.4 determines the measurement of success. And what it's saying is that during the planning process, participants discussed how Branford would measure success with regards to the POCD. Success is often measured through accomplishment of an aim or purpose, and this POCD is no different. The aim and purpose of the POCD is to make Branford a better place, maintain and enhance the quality of life for residents, provide a supportive place for business and innovation, support Branford as a place to welcome visitors, and take advantage of opportunities and strengths to minimize threats to our common well-being. It also says that full review should be had since these desires are common to many parts of the community. I am one of those 11th hour attorneys who tried to contact Mr. Mancini to discuss this application before it went forward today. And while I understand his client's position that they want to go forward today, the reason in which we wanted to approach them was the fact of perhaps a more comprehensive application would be more beneficial to the town as a whole. What we're looking at here is 4 properties, just 4 pieces of land. Your plan of conservation development even cites itself that all of these things that we are aiming to do to measure success for a town as part of this conservation development is part of many communities within the town and shouldn't be of a limited usage and a limited thing to be looked at. So therefore, looking at this BL hybrid zone solely with regards to these 4 properties, when an interchange at 54 can stand the benefit of a similar hybrid zone at 55 and at 56. With that being said, your plan of conservation and development also points out that a hybrid zone may be beneficial to 54 and 55 and 53, but neglects any sort of potential for this hybrid zone off the 56 interchange. If we are looking at, and we've heard today the usage of the word flexibility many times, we want to provide flexibility to this property, flexibility. And even Harry cited, the flexibility of this application provides a gateway to the community. The gateway to this community is not heading north only from East Haven into Branford. There is a second gateway into this community as well, which is heading south from Guilford down into Branford. So if we're just focusing on adding flexibility to the gateway of our community, perhaps we should be looking at not only just exit 53 and the interchange at exit 53, but also 54, 55, and especially 56. Continuing on, when you go back to the plan of conservation development, there is a specific section in there that's labeled sorries. And what the sorries section actually is asking is to depict the problems within the town. It states that the major problem being exit 53, its interchange and traffic-related issues. I had the opportunity before the meeting to watch the preliminary hearing that was had on July 25th, 2019. And it was Mr. Mancini who referenced this exit 53 interchange as a broken traffic area. It's hard to fathom how putting a hybrid zone that has actual more usages than what they are aiming to get back to. They said that they're aiming to get back to the original IG zone that they originally had, but yet are offering a hybrid zone that provides them with more usages and less stringent standard to achieve those usages than what's in the IG zone into what's called a broken traffic area. This is essentially putting a Band-Aid on your arm for a leg wound. You're really not accomplishing the goal. What we're having here is we are adding tractor-trailer traffic. We are adding whatever traffic comes with a fulfillment center that we don't even know the definition of, but we're asking this board to approve a fulfillment center that we don't know the definition of. So we don't know what goes along with that, the traffic that goes along with it, the 18-wheelers that are going to go along with it. And we're adding that to a broken traffic area. Now, again, I'm not saying that exit 53 does not need some sort of zone. What I'm saying is what you're being asked to do, perhaps, is short-sighted. In that being the case, again, we've heard today that the original zone for this property was an IG2. And the IG2 then got changed to a BL. And the purpose of this is to get us back to what's close to an IG2. Then why are we going for this overkill approach of this hybrid zone that is going to add even more usages to this site as opposed to a zone change just getting it back to the IG2? If that's what our true intention is here, then that's an available option. I also understand that as part of the plan of conservation and development that when you bring up exit 56, the point is, hey, exit 56 has a planned development district that you can do that to change that zone. That's not limited to exit 56. You can do that at exit 55, 54, and 53. So the fact that we point to exit 56 as, hey, you don't get a hybrid zone. You shouldn't get a hybrid zone because you get a PDD. Well, 53 can get a PDD too. 54 can get a PDD. And that PDD is available to anybody who makes the application for it. Again, this should not be viewed in a vacuum with regards to 4 singular properties. It should be viewed in a larger stance. Also at that meeting in July, it was pointed that exit 56 is the goal area, essentially. We look at exit 56 and we see that it's thriving, is what Mr. Mancini said at that hearing. There's over 200 acres of vacant land right off exit 56. That's not thriving. It's an IG zone that is out of date for industrial uses and tech park usages that this town has been promised for years and years and years that has still not come. So why isn't that section of town, also a gateway, able to utilize the exact same thing that is being asked of this? And I understand this board can only hear the application that's in front of it. I am not dull to that fact. But the reason why I wanted to approach the applicant beforehand is perhaps a more beneficial application would be a more expansive application as opposed to an application of just 4 properties. With that being the case, I do have to at least pose the question of, is this application of only 4 properties a prototypical spot zoning? What you have is 4 singular properties that have been described during this public hearing at least 10 times as unique. You have properties surrounding this property that are also of the BL zone that are not subject to this hybrid zone. So we are calling this a BL hybrid zone, but we are also saying at the same time, hey, other BL usages or BL properties off of exit 56, you can't utilize this. If this is all-inclusive and not spot zoning, this should be available to all the BL usages off of exit 56, if that's the true nature of this. Other things that, when you hear these things as part of a text change or a map change that should raise a red flag is our property. You should never hear our property when proposing a text change, because there is no our property. Our property is a general property. If there is an our property aspect of this, there is a spot zoning aspect of this. We are focused on our property. The other portion of the our property thing that was brought up as part of this was it won't be economically feasible for us. Our property will lose money. That's spot zoning. You are only concerned about your property. This is a hybrid zone that is a guise for 4 properties that is not what the true intention of the hybrid zone was discussed at the POCD. The POCD is to advance the entire interchange areas, 53, 54, 55, and should be 56. Just a couple of the things that I would just raise that are potential issues with regards to this. I honestly don't think that the public hearing could be closed today, especially with changes to the text the day of the meeting. I'm not quite sure notice was sufficient with regards to what the proper language was. The fact that Mr. Mancini even showed up here today and said that, you know, he's getting the language of the meeting here today as well, to have the public hearing closed and have the public have the ability to speak with regards to what the true language of the text actually is while it's being changed on the fly, I think would be potentially problemsome. Last thing is, I'm not quite sure procedurally that a text amendment and a map amendment can be achieved at the exact same time. A map amendment puts into effect what the text change is. So you have a presentation of a text change, which will ultimately get approved and then ultimately have a future effective date. How does that take place when you already have a map approved, approving something that hasn't been approved yet, essentially? So the fact that we're having two applications here today, I would say that the map change is premature and that application should actually not be heard today, and that the text change should continue on itself with the public hearing being held open for the potential of a more expansive application, potentially, to which I might add a more expansive application would eliminate the spot zoning aspect of this, because it would not only include just 4 properties, but include properties along the 54, 55, and 56 interchanges. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, good evening. Christopher McCormick from Pullman & Comley, Bridgeport, Connecticut, 850 Main Street. I represent 595, help me out, Circle Corporation, yeah, and Charlie Weber. Just very briefly, I'm, like Mr. Mingione, I'm not rising in opposition or support necessarily, but simply to comment. Obviously, our perspective is from that of property around exit 56. And I think what I'd like to emphasize is what both Mr. Mancini and Mr. Mingione have observed, which is there's a theme running through their comments about there being commonalities among all 4 interchanges. And to some extent, the plan of conservation development reflects this. To some extent, it places exit 56 in a separate category because of the IG2 zoning. It's interesting in that respect, Mr. Mancini pointed out the sort of IG2 heritage, if you will, of the exit 53 area. And I think that's that, and the comments you've heard about the difficulty of getting certain kinds of tenants for the properties that are the subject of the application tonight. And also the difficulty of getting the kinds of uses that were perhaps at one time hoped for in the IG2 area around exit 56. Circumstances have changed, and it may well be that some of the concepts that have been discussed tonight, and I would submit that many of the concepts that have been discussed tonight as justifications for creating this kind of hybrid zone with this kind of flexibility would apply equally to exit 56. And I'm not going to speak to the other interchanges. But whether it's directly applicable or simply analogous, either way, that kind of concept could be useful in the future, and we just wanted to make the comment now that if the commission is favorably disposed to this kind of approach here, we would hope that the commission will be favorably disposed to a similar kind of approach in other contexts at other times.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public wish to comment at this time? Seeing none, Mr. Mancini.
Mr. Chair, I just want to respond to 2 things that Attorney Nick talked about earlier. And so I'm confused because the text amendment that we made included items, as I stated, that were less traffic intensive, getting away from the retail, commercial, shopping center, higher trip generation rates. I will make sure that he gets a copy of the ITE language that we just submitted today. So he characterized that I added things that were going to be more traffic. I didn't. That's the whole reason why we're here. We're adding items that would generate less traffic.
One thing he did say is that maybe the type of traffic, you maybe get larger vehicles. Is that accurate?
Understood. So that takes me to his second point. He talked about how I spoke fondly about exit 56 and the uses up there. The reason why I did that is because in what is happening up there is that there are a series of smaller type buildings that have flexibility in the types of tenants that are going there. You can have anything from a brewery to Charlie Weber's own manufacturing, very successful business that does great business that has 5 employees. There's great flexibility. That's all we're saying, that on this piece of land right now, we can't build those types of things that are up at exit 56. And yes, there are other lands at exit 56, but some of the problems with those lands have to do with their topography and the lay of the land, and less to do with traffic, because the traffic is solid up there. It's just that those users are thriving. And there, of the buildings that are built up there, there aren't that many vacancies.
Hi, my name's Chris Shapiro. I'm the applicant. John Mancini is representing my family and I. And I just wanted to say a couple things. First of all, just so you guys know, my grandfather purchased this land a long time ago. I know you guys know the history of it. Probably some of you were around before I was. But I wanted to speak in regards to or Attorney Mahone's, what he was saying, a few of the things. That I'm not sure if you guys know the full history behind this, but about a year ago is when this all started. We met with Harry. We met multiple times. We got feedback from him. We changed the application. We got feedback again. We submitted the application. Then, it wasn't correct, so we pulled it. Then we got feedback again. We revised it. And then we finally got to a point where, we all agreed on what it was, and that's what you have before you guys. And we literally, came to you guys 3 months ago, July 25th, as Attorney Mahone pointed out, and we wanted your input. And this isn't something that we tried to shove down anybody's throat. We put it out there on public record. We got your guys' input. We saw that you guys approved of it. I don't remember one negative thing being spoken of that night. And, we left all on the same page. So we went back with Harry. We put the application together, and now it's before you. This has been public for 3 months that we want to do something like this. At 5 p.m. tonight is when I got the call from John Mancini, who Attorney Mahone had just called him, telling us to pull the thing or he's going to oppose it. That's not fair to us. We've been paying over $100,000 a year in taxes on these two things. We're trying to get something that we can make a reasonable development that everybody in this town can benefit from, and we put together something that everybody has been in agreement of, except his undisclosed clients at Exit 56, which, by the way, he won't tell me exactly what clients he's representing. We don't even know what zone they're in. I mean, if you guys postpone this, he can have his clients, they might have all types of different zones. We might have to go back to the drawing board, and it's just really not fair to us. We have an application before you guys right now, which we believe is fair, which we know is good for the town. And we also have some interest, with clients that we think will be good for this town, and it's interest that we've never had before. When Stop and Shop, was holding us up in a lease for a long time. I'm not sure if you guys know that, but they backed away a few years ago. We put the property back on the market with Lou Prota. As you guys know, he's one of the better commercial real estate brokers. We did not get one serious inquiry because of the traffic. I mean, people called them up and, they found out about, the situation we were in, and, the big retailers are just unwilling to put down the money because it's so extensive. So this is something we have before you, today. And I do just want to say one thing, which, I just want to frame this here. He said this application is short-sighted. Well, I don't know, because he just found out about this at 2 p.m. today, as he admitted. But if he did some research into this, he would know that we really all put this application together, and he's pretty much calling the commission and Harry short-sighted in this town, because this is really something that we've all, taken part in. So, I really, another thing is that he said that because of the small, change in, well, I guess it was a typo error from, John Mancini's firm copying the line for the fulfillment center, which we corrected. He says that because there's just been such a recent revision that it's unfair to close the hearing tonight. I would say that not one member of the public has had any negative things to say about that specific revision. So I don't think that's fair to hang up on that. I know this is good for the town. We remain in a position where we're paying over $100,000 a year in taxes that we have interest in. We can't do anything. I would respectfully ask that you guys close the public hearing tonight and vote on this. And Harry, I just have one quick question for you, if I'm allowed to ask a question. Is there anything that would limit Attorney Mahone's applicants from making their own application in the future?
No.
That's all.
Okay. Mr. Mancini, can I ask a question? Just so when you stood up initially, you indicated a possibility of keeping the public hearing open to present us a maxed out picture of what it would be, and also providing some, sample definitions at least.
Yeah.
Fulfillment Center, are you rescinding that, or?
Yeah, no, I think if I may, Chris, Chris was speaking to the frustration of what we just heard earlier, hearing about what we heard at the, late in the day today. And I can appreciate what he said. What I'm saying is, if the commission, because that's what I'm concerned about, if Harry and the commission want those documents, you guys meet every 2 weeks, we can provide you with that information and keep it open. But my focus is on the commission.
Sure.
So.
Do you have any concern legally? I'm just, that you
No,
have a procedural error if in fact, 'cause
I'm,
you made a change.
I'm a little concerned that, the comments by Harry were, Monday or Tuesday, and we found that text change today. That would give us time to check that box in the event that that was a legal concern. I'm not a lawyer, so unlike you, I don't know whether or not I should be concerned about that, so.
Okay, so here's the question. Do we want to continue the public hearing? I think we could get the additional information that I think might be helpful. And I think it may cure, if someone's claiming you brought in something the night of the hearing and didn't have enough time, if we continue
I'd like
with
to see
it.
what it's maxed out to,
Yeah.
like
Okay,
John said, and whatever.
okay. So, yeah, so we'll continue it to our next meeting, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Great. So when is our next meeting? It is
November 7th,
November 7th.
right
So
here.
we'll continue right here on November 7th. Thank you. Okay, so we'll continue this matter as a public hearing. We're not closing it. And that is for both the text and the map amendment, which are items number 2 and 3 of the agenda. That brings us to item number 4 of the agenda, which is Peter Kushner, 3 Elms Road, special exception for an oversized accessory structure. My understanding is the applicant has requested that we open and continue this to our November 7th meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Is the applicant here by any chance on that?
The applicant is not here.
Okay. So if you're here on is anyone here on item number 4, 3 Elms Road, special exception for an oversized accessory structure? I don't see it. I would have recommended that you come to our next meeting. So what we'll do is we'll open item number 3 as a public hearing. We'll continue that to our November 7th meeting. That brings us to item number 5, 339 West Main Street. a special exception for the installation of parking. And I understand that's the same situation, the applicant is, are you ready to go? What's going on with this?
So, we did present to wetlands last week.
Right.
And, it looks like we're gonna have an approval there that we're out of the 100-foot regulated area. They have something in their procedures that they can't move anything in the first meeting.
Right.
So,
Oh, you need a mic, sorry, yeah.
Their procedure is that they can't approve anything on one meeting, so we have to go back next month. I don't think you folks can act until they do.
Right.
So it's up to you whether you want to hear this or not. I understand you have more stuff tonight, so if you, it's really up to you at this point.
Do we want to just do it all in the next meeting? Yeah. Okay, let's just do it all on November 7th. So we'll just open and continue that. Okay, so that is item number 5. That brings us to our, that's it for the public hearings. Brings us to minutes. And do we send out 2 sets of minutes?
I believe you just have one.
Just one, okay.
That would be the last meeting.
The last
Still
meeting.
working on the one before that.
Okay.
In terms of adding things.
So the meeting minutes from our October 3rd meeting were sent out in our packet, and does anyone, if you had a chance to review, and does someone want to make a motion on that? They look good to me.
I wasn't here last week.
Oh, that's, okay. Somebody was here, maybe want to make the motion.
Move to approve.
Okay. Joe makes a motion to approve the minutes from our October 3rd meetings. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by John. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Still vote. Okay, so the minutes are adopted. Any correspondence?
There are a couple of small items that have to do with cell towers. It's another communication about 10 Sylvia Street, and actually the other additional item is a referral from the town of East Haven. They are undergoing a comprehensive revision to their zoning regulations, and they have a public hearing set for November 6th. I believe the document might be online if anyone's interested in the town of East Haven website, but if anyone's interested in learning more and you want a little assistance getting hold of the document, let me know.
Okay, great. That brings us to old business. Item number 1, that's Beacon Communities. First thing we need to decide is we need to figure out who's voting on this, or who's going to be sitting for deliberations. So I think, Joe, you're recused, that's correct? Okay, so Joe's going to be recused. And next, we got to make sure everyone's seen all of the public hearings. And then we got to see so we need one replacement. Marcy, did you review the public hearing? So you've seen.
Listened to the tape.
You listened to the tape of the public hearing, okay. so
Excuse me,
you're good.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The public hearing that we heard, number 1.
Yes, oh, you're right, you're right. You know what? Let's bring up our public hearing matter first, because thank you for calling that to my attention. We often do that, and I was just following the agenda and neglecting our normal procedure. So yeah, item here number 1 was 30 School Street, Mr. Henschel's special exception. And Harry, I think that seemed, we didn't hear any negative public comments. It seemed it's gotten a lot of public scrutiny, both through wetlands and through the ZBA. This was here simply for the fill application component, and seemed to make sense. Was there any, for the conditions you had on page 3 of the staff report, you have a condition about the lighting. Was there something else that was suggested?
There was a stormwater, I don't know if I've got some wording, but,
Oh, okay, go ahead.
yes, it could be a condition number 2, stormwater runoff from the site shall not be directed across the sidewalk.
Okay. Okay, so that would be the second condition, and the other recommended conditions are on page 3 of the staff report. It's about the lighting, it's in the report. So is someone want to make a motion to approve this application with those 2 conditions, including the second one that Harry just mentioned?
Move to approve as amended.
Motion made by Joe. Is there a second? Second by Joe. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye, okay. Thank you, Harry, for reminding me. So, it's always good to get some off our agenda. That brings us now to Beacon. So, we are getting back just to figuring out who is going to deliberate and vote on this. So it looks like, Marcy, you're good because you listened to the hearing. So we need someone to fit in for an alternate because Joe is recusing himself. So who's up?
Actually, Dave Dyer would be, but he's not in attendance tonight and has not listened to any of the recordings as far as I know. So between Fred and Paul, I believe Paul voted the last meeting on the 3rd, so that would leave Fred as number 1.
Okay. So Fred, you've, okay. So the deliberating will be Fred, you will be sitting in for Joe. Okay, so, want me to start?
Yep.
Okay. Here's what's going on. We had an approval of the modified version of the of Beacon, of the site plan. That was, again, that was the removal of the Melrose access coming in by Slanting Road. We imposed a number of conditions. The applicant was unclear, had questions about some of the conditions, filed an appeal, so there is an appeal in court on that. But we sent a letter clarifying what our understanding of what the conditions were. And there were, so the gist of the application comes down to 3 things. One was the request that we incorporate our clarification of the conditions. We had that August letter as part of the record so that would amplify the other conditions and just explain what they were. That was number 1. And I'll just comment on that. That seems relatively uncontroversial. I think we meant that. I did read that letter again tonight, and I thought I saw typos. But the typos related to the conditions 5, B, and C, which are the ones that they wanted taken out anyway. So that just may be something we may want to clean up, and we're going to be addressing those separately anyway, so I don't know if that's an issue. But I didn't see that particularly as being that controversial, because those were just explaining what we meant by that. The second element was really addressed to 5C, I think, and that was the issue of the pullover area on the site plan, that it was located on property, or at least partially on property of the town. And their request was saying, well, you can keep it there because we think that's fine. There's no requirement for a pullover. You can just keep it there. But it's on land of the town, and we said if it's on land of the town, you need to get authority from the town to do that. So they proposed also just moving it onto their property and enlarging it. And that's probably the cleanest way to deal with that. Then you don't have to, you have to argue about whose property it's on. It's all on their property, and it's enlarged somewhat. So that is, so I'm okay with that, of approving the modification to the site plan, putting the whole pullover area onto their site. And then the third question was eliminate or revise conditions 5B and 5C. And those were conditions that recommended, I should probably dig them up, I think 5C actually was one that said you needed, if you keep the pullover, 5C was if the pullover's on the town property, you need to get an easement from the town to do that. And if they put it on their property, then I think that addresses 5C. And I think we come down to 5D. and that's the main issue in my mind. And the issue concerns emergency access to serve the property and getting approval from the town for emergency access to go on town property, and that property will stay open for town use so that emergency access vehicles can go on there. That's the general issue. And What I basically see this as, this in my mind is like a common driveway situation. And I've had, where two owners are using the same access way in the same parking lot. I've seen it in commercial senses, and typically it's just by cross easements, but it could happen in a residential sense too. And what I think has happened is traditionally, there has just been coexistence. That you've had one town entity, the Branford Housing Authority, using this, and you've had another, it was Foot Park for the longest time, and the town only acquired ownership a few years ago. But now you have the town entity, but you have two town entities. No one, frankly, paid attention. As is evidenced by the fact that the half the ball field is owned by the Housing Authority. and so they just used it. But now we have a situation where, and I don't know for sure, but it appears that there may be a dispute about the use between the different entities of this thing, and they've drawn a line. And they didn't give easements to each other. They just drew the line, and apparently, so they were talking because they came to an agreement that we should draw the line, and no one's disputing that. But now there's this whole other area about this area that's owned by the town, whether they can use it or not for emergency access. And one thing is, I think they haven't asked. I mean, I don't think they've quite asked for it yet because they've assumed based on the denial of the Melrose, they wouldn't get it. To me, I mean, that's a fair question in my mind because to me, it's separate to say that, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily infer from the denial of the right to put a whole driveway across from Melrose into there, which is, to me, a more radical change, that equates to denial of the right to something that is already right there. And the town has agreed, I guess, because this calls for the phase 1 improvements on town property, and apparently town has agreed to that. So I don't know. So, and they haven't asked, but I don't know. But that's sort of the situation is. You had this common historical thing, there wasn't a fight. All of a sudden, whoops, now they're getting into a fight, which is why you want easements in the first place. One of the ways I look at this is that if the situation were flipped, would the shoe be on the other foot? And for example, if you look at the site plan, there's the Indian Neck School that's over there adjacent to that. There is a access behind the Indian Neck School off of the Sliney Road access, and it goes in there. And say, for example, like they're doing at the middle school, we've got a 40-foot high middle school, 3-story middle school. They tore down the Indian Neck School and said, we want to put a large building there, and we want to, and we need emergency access off of Sliney Road to go into the back there. What standard would we apply to the town as to Beacon? Would we say, the town, you need to get from Beacon an easement or something to go back there, or do you just have the right to do it? Because do you just have the right to go on there even though they own it? And I, for that, I would think that we would require that, again, if the situation were flipped, we would require that some sort of permission to use the road. So, and the other thing is from the fire marshal, I understood his testimony to be that, hey, look, we need as much space as we can get back there. If there's an emergency, to maneuver to get around, we need to get there. They show a turnover area on this, what is this, C-107A?
Yes.
What is this area?
Towards the concession.
Yeah, and the fire chief said, I need the whole area to move around.
It shows going all the way back to the concessions.
And that's frankly how I interpreted his comments through here. And I think, sure, it's good to have one pullover area on their spot. He did mention that, look, if it's a serious fire, you're going to have lots of emergency vehicles there. You mentioned Castellans, they had like 5 or 8 or something, or 10, I don't know. That was a major fire, so that's fair. So my sense on this is that, yes, there needs to be some permission from the town that area will remain open and unobstructed for emergency access to serve the beacon site, unless the fire marshal comes up with something different, or unless they move the building or tear down the building. Where I kind of agree, I think, with Mr. Hollister somewhat in saying that I don't know if that has to be a deed restriction. I don't know if that has to be an easement. It's not necessarily a use for the beacon property itself. They're not asking to use the property. It's just for emergency access. And it may be, and it could be changed by the fire marshal, and it could be changed to the building if the building gets moved or whatever, so it's not necessarily permanent. But I think you still need some sort of permission from the town. An easement would be great, and that would be good, or some sort of restriction, but I don't know if it has to be that. I think it could be just some other, just agreement that this area will remain, that will be maintained and available for emergency access unless the fire marshal says otherwise. And that may not have to, so whether that goes to the RTM or not, I have no idea. I don't have to know, I don't want to know. But I think it is a fair point that it wouldn't necessarily, I think, have to be a deed restriction, but it would require some approval from the town. And I don't know what entity is going to do that. I don't know if it's Park and Rec, I don't know if it's the Board of Selectmen, I don't know if it's RTM, it may be any or all. So anyway, that's where I'm sort of coming down on this, that this requested modification, that we agree with the incorporation of the letter. That was number one, but I want to review it, make sure there's no more typos, and also refine what we said about conditions 5.2 and 5C. That we approve the change to the pullover area, bringing it, enlarging it, and pulling it all onto their property. And on the other one, that we modify the condition that we still require that that consent be obtained from the town so that the area is maintained and open for emergency access unless otherwise changed by the town, unless the fire marshal says otherwise. I don't know why he would. But, you know, it's sort of his call, or unless the building moves. But I don't think we need to specify how that gets done, or that it be an easement, or the particular type of deed, it be a deed restriction at all. But let that be, you know, approved by the town, however the town attorney, they figure that out, however they review that. So that's sort of where I'm coming down. Haha, Daniel. So anyway, what do other people think?
I have a comment.
Sure.
This one?
The example you gave about the town and the Branford Housing Authority sort of kind of using each other's land without being a problem are two entities that are existing. It's a problem that they're there already. And that's a different resolution when two entities are there and try to figure out who should use whose land. And the answer would be what was suggested, you know, redefine the lines the way they're supposed to be. This isn't the same thing. This is an application. This is a piece of paper with a building on it. That building could have been constructed any way it had to be to incorporate all the safety rules that the fire marshal or, you know, the Planning and Zoning Commission put on it. And so I don't see it as, well, we have the right to go over it. I agree that that building was existing and the town were going to build a wall or a barricade or whatever it was going to be. I would agree with Mr. Hoster that by all means that fire should smash that fence down. But then we don't have that here. We have a hypothetical situation, which is a building is being proposed and they haven't met the regulations or the fire marshal. And I don't see why we should concede any of it. I don't think this commission's been hard on the applicant, especially the fact that it's an affordable housing application. I think that, you know, they have the advantage. And if it's a matter of safety, and that's what we're arguing, is this the farmer says it's a safety issue. I can't imagine conceding that point to the applicant.
My only comment, Fred, is that I don't think the fire marshal objected to this. I didn't see him saying that it was unsafe or that he couldn't do it. He just said he needed all the space to do it.
Can I make a comment? I might make a long comment.
Well, let's...
It's sort of related to that.
Okay. Okay, go
So
ahead.
We need to use the mics. Tim.
Use the microphone, okay, I'm sorry. So you had mentioned about, I think there's good design, there's good neighbors, and there's laws, and we need to find the right balance. We want to be good neighbors and have affordable housing, but we also need to be aware of safety. Sliney Field was separate from Foot Park for years. It's only until recently that the town now owns Foot Park. So that's the reason for the separation between the access from Foot Park into Sliney. But during Foot Park hours, there's always been the ability to park over in that big parking lot. And what's solely missing is a connection between Foot Park and Sliney Field. That said, the road to Sliney on the Beacon properties is subject to whether that's safe or not. I personally feel that that's not a safe road off of 149, but, we've got good neighbors. When Foot and Sliney owned, there was a clear division, and so the Housing Authority and Sliney made it work as far as access and parking, and even then, there were parking issues with the relation to the fields, not enough parking for Sliney Fields because of the relationship. Now, fast forward, we have an application that's proposing many more cars, and they're proposing a new building. And so now I'm going to good design, where propose something that works, and, in my opinion, it would be Beacon's right to not allow Sliney Field their access through their land. And I personally don't think it should be there, and I think that that would encourage some access along Melrose. Then if that were a secondary access, then you could eliminate the volume of traffic coming from the park to 146. In listening to the testimony about Detroit and the fires, I found that extremely compelling, because as much as I understood the amount of circulation space that was needed for the truck, and whether that is on whoever's property and whatever walls they go over, cut through, that's fine. But, you're asking us to risk the events that are going on at the park and to the control of the park for the benefit of, providing a safe, allowance for those fire trucks. So now you're asking the town to compromise the use of their property as far as, parking and what little parking they have, to allow the space for the fire trucks to get in there, to move around, and so forth. When, if they designed a different building or use their road to go around the back of the parking lot through their parking lot, there's other solutions that could have been proposed that would allow for a separate use of the two parcels, i.e., good neighbors, stay on your own piece of land, good design a project that fits the site that you're working with, and, then maybe we wouldn't be constructing all of these laws for deeds or not, and approvals and so forth. I feel like we're bending over backwards to create laws and use the laws to get more into the project than should really fit there. So that's kind of, that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
I mean, the bottom line is pretty simple. It doesn't matter what kind of a project it is. You can't really plan and approve a project that encumbers an adjacent property without permission. Right? What am I missing here?
Right. I think you need to have permission. My understanding, the fire marshal said he didn't say he couldn't do it. I think he approved the plan, but he says he needs the whole space, and that makes perfect sense. So you need permission. Again, my point is it may not have to be a deed restriction because, for all the reasons I mentioned, but I think you need permission.
So
And I understand.
So the deed restriction is what would allow the fire truck to actually just go on there?
Something
Or,
The deed restriction would ensure that it's maintained as a paved area. So that
as a fire access area, so there would be
No,
parking?
it's just so that it's not a fire lane or anything. It's just an area where they can bring in the fire trucks and park.
Just a right to pass and repass.
Right.
So it would have to be in the set aisles of the parking area. And I just say that because I know down at Sliney Field, they have painted lines, they put cans there to try to keep people from parking in the yellow striped areas, and the cans are moved, you know, I just know the area very well. And so, you know, God forbid there's an event when there's something going on at Sliney Field, and a lot of cars are gonna get plowed over, and there's gonna be a lot of insurance claims because, you know, 8 trucks have to come through potentially if it's a catastrophic event, you know.
I think that there's going to be a separate pullover layer, that's going to be striped, there's going to be the no parking in the fire lanes as you access, and that's the main area, but yeah, I think there's always an issue of whether people are going to park where they shouldn't in fire lanes and so forth. I don't think that's, you know, that's kind of out there. And there's also access through their parking lot, too. I mean, we know that. We're sort of, you know, they have their own parking lot, which isn't even there now. That's an amenity. It's that side of the property that they need secondary access for to serve that area.
Provide a way around the back of the building into that parking lot so you don't have to do a very awkward K-turn. And what if there's 8 trucks? How do 8 trucks do a K-turn out of Sliney Field without that Melrose extension?
First of all,
It just doesn't work from a
I don't
circulation
see
standpoint. as
what
far as
a truck can probably just cross the lawn anyway. I mean, you don't need to have a paved thing for a truck to go down there. But
So
Harry?
you're saying that in a case of an emergency, the truck is likely to have to go out through an invisible grass strip that would be Melrose Avenue?
No, I'm not.
In order to, well, I'm thinking that that's what would have to happen, because if you've got 3 or 4 trucks there, only one can turn around to pass. You know, you're gonna be looking for the trucks to move in a one-way direction.
I'm relying on what the fire marshal said. The fire marshal didn't say that this doesn't work, that it's not enough work. He said he needed the entire area. He needed that pull around and to get in and out. Harry, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to draw the commission's attention back to the wording of the, let's say 5C and 5D, but 5C. And there was a concern, as I recall, expressed by the fire marshal this addressed, which was about any building or physical modifications to the area shown as emergency vehicle pullover, which is now on the applicant's property, if you accept the site plan mods or the other phase 1 improvements. And there's a sheet reference here, and I brought that sheet and flipped it over, but it wasn't just access, it was also changes to the property, the town's property, that might impede vehicular access. And I think that's what the words, it's my understanding anyway, of what the condition was directed towards.
Right. I'm looking at his March 29th letter and also his September 18th letter. And I didn't see anywhere in that letter where he does say that, I mean, he does say we need to ensure, I think he just says, I want a deed restriction, but frankly, that's not a fire marshal issue, that's more of a legal issue as to how you do it. But he didn't say, I can't do it, that it's just not enough room, or I can't get enough vehicles there, or any of that, which you're saying right now.
But I heard that he needed, as a result of the Detroit, he used the Detroit fire as an example based on the size of the building, and he said that that fire had 8 vehicles. And then there was other testimony that spoke to 4 or 5 vehicles going on an average call to the facility.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, 4 or 5 vehicles, if they're ambulances, no problem, but if you've got 3 ladder trucks that are 54 feet long, or I'm probably remembering the wrong length, that's a lot of vehicle to turn around, especially when there's more than one there. And if there's cars parked there, you're more apt to be either backing out onto the road or cutting across the lawn. And, you know, if you're gonna cut across, you know, somebody else's lawn, why don't you just provide the path behind your property to cut across into the parking lot? And then I have no issue.
Okay. Marcy, I can say,
Just from a pure design standpoint.
I'm relying on what the fire marshal said and what's in his letter.
I'm relying on what he said too.
But he didn't say that we can't do it. That's what he said.
That's what I interpreted him saying.
Okay. I
mean,
don't know. We can watch the tape again and see what we think. But I didn't see him saying that, and I don't see him saying that in his written comments either.
guess I should have
I
written a
understand
minute.
what Marcy's saying, but,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I interpret it as.
the fire
that-
marshal said that he could do it.
Well, he-
That's it.
But he said that there'd be 8 vehicles. I didn't hear him say how he could do it.
Well, I don't know if they're
I-
all going to be in this back parking.
Right, I know.
Okay, well.
I know, there's the whole other parking lot that serves this.
Right,
This
and
is
there
the
was
secondary.
the part about the hose, the
emergency.
first hose
Right,
coming
yeah.
in. I mean, I
You can't-
listened to it.
You can't run over the hose, yeah, I get that, you know.
I mean, I listened to it.
Right.
I mean, I've been here, but I listened to it.
No, and if there's sort of major complication, there would be 8. I agree with that.
And I'm sure these are all things the town's going to consider.
Right, and that's why you need to have access to the whole area, and you need to get permission from the town.
That's exactly
I
right.
mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from. And it's not an unreasonable condition, because I'm saying we're the shoe on the other foot. We would say, town, you need to get permission from Beacon to use their property for emergency access. That's kind of like, so it's not a standard that I'm just being, applying one way.
But the reason you need to ask permission is because they're putting too much on their own property. And maybe because of the 830G requirements, we have to present it, we have to approve it that way. But I feel like there's a strong enough case to prove that it's an unsafe proposal for,
Okay.
and that's the reason why I vote the way I did.
Right, no, I understand. Any other thoughts? I mean, so that's what I'm thinking of, and I'm looking, I think I know where it's going, but, so I'm looking for I think we go with a resolution that sort of outlines on those 3 things, sort of, yes, we can incorporate the letter, I'm going to check it over again. Yes, we approve have the pullover be entirely on their property and enlarged and make that sort of a modification. And also, we modify condition 5 and B, A and B, 5C, B and C. I think the one about the pullover, I think we can get rid of since they put it all on their property. But, and then on the other one, we emphasize that you need to get permission from, you need permission from the town to make sure that this stays open for emergency access, unless the fire marshal says otherwise, or the building changes. And who does that? I don't know. And whether that has to be the jurisdiction, I don't know. I don't think we have to decide that.
And that town has responsibility to keep it open, so the fire equipment can do its job.
Yeah, that it has to be open and available. Right. Yeah.
One of the bigger problems is, or one of the, I see it, is if they're having summer events there, and people are gonna be parking in these restricted areas.
Right.
And you're gonna have to have a police and a tow truck there moving all these cars, because that thing's gotta be maintained, as far as I'm concerned, 100% of the time. Not just, when they're not using the field. So that, not only do you need to have permission, but you also have to make sure that it's being maintained and open at all times, unless they come up with some other plan. But if you're gonna require that access to be open, then that means no parking, in the fire zone.
Yeah, they can't
which
park
is
in the
all
fire
that
lanes,
area.
absolutely. Yeah, well, on the access way. I mean,
That might cause a problem. That might be a situation that.
I mean, there's paved parking, yeah, I think there, so yeah, that could, but I mean, the parking spaces are in a different location, but yeah.
Well, when there's some big games and 2 or 3 games are going on at the same time, everybody's scrambling for a space. And if that's an open space, it's gonna look very tempting to park a car.
That's what they do now. And there's not the,
Just a reminder, use the mics.
Right here.
Right there.
So we have to direct our staff to come up with something. I've sort of given my suggestion, I don't know, and I kind of see opposed. And I don't know, I don't know, are you, John, you finished?
Yeah,
Joe, are you?
I agree with you.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm not, yeah, they have to.
They have
go
to
by
get permission.
Permission, and the fire marshal.
Right.
Has to have his, whatever he needs.
right.
So that's where it's.
And I'm going by what, I could quote from the fire marshal law, that's where I'm coming from. I'm basing this on the emergency the testimony and the emergency reports is that this is what he needs, so. I think that's what we say. Again, I think we don't have to address the issue whether it has to be a deed restriction or not, but it definitely needs to be permission, so that means some agency has to approve it from the town. I don't know which one.
Just for purposes, so I'm clear, and maybe we're both clear, it sounds like you're looking to modify the language a little bit on 5C and D to maybe not specifically refer to the need for executed deed restriction, and the rest is the phrase there already. This is or equivalent legal instrument approved by the town council. So it
Yes.
sounds like you want to expand that a little bit and leave to the town council the determination of what's acceptable, appropriate, that will guarantee that the town has agreed to put no buildings or walls or obstacles in the path of fire vehicles as has been described in the plans and so forth.
Yes, yes, that's it, and we can look at language, whatever. The main thing is it could be some sort of an agreement from the town, and who makes it, more of a contractual situation versus necessarily deed restriction.
But you certainly, I would imagine, want something that's legally binding, that
Yeah,
does bind the town.
yeah, contracts
to
are
agree
binding,
that-
so, whatever, whoever gives the permission to do it, they need permission from the town. Yeah.
So the town has to incur the cost for all the towing for that's gonna have to happen? I mean, who incurs that cost? If it's gotta be policed on a regular basis and...
I don't know, who incurs that cost now when someone's parking in a fire lane and they have to tow a vehicle? I don't know. That's a generic problem that could happen in the event of emergency, but I don't know. I don't know who incurs that cost. I know for some emergency service stuff, they bill the user. So, if you get called to your house and they have to pick you out of your house, you get a bill for it, so. I don't
Well,
know.
there is, condition 2A, which refers to the need for an agreement, in this
Right.
case. It's a legally binding agreement between the town and the applicants regarding maintenance of the Phase 1 improvements to the area shown there, extending pretty much to the concession stand, including snow removal to ensure around-the-clock unrestricted year-round access for emergency vehicles.
Right, and we had a clarification of that too, about, and in the clarification, I think for the part of it that's on Beacon's own land, you don't need a contract, but, they can just do it themselves. But if you want the town to, you may have to reach an agreement with town there may be some contractual involving the town land, but not for your own land. At least that's how I read that, so. Danielle, do you have any comments?
No, I understand the revision to the condition, and, I also understand why we said an easement or a deed restriction, some encumbrance that ran with the land would have to go to RTM. And I will just have to think about, and I'll work with staff and Attorney Anaskovich, just to determine if there are other, contractual methods that would work for this type of agreement. And it might just be something that's just discussed and addressed between the town and the applicant outside of this process. And it still might require, in our
It might.
in our opinion.
I think it's going to require somebody's approval. But I don't know if it's the RTM. If the town had consented to this application, does the RTM sign off on that? I don't know. Because we wouldn't be having this question if the town had consented to it. The issue is that I don't know if this type of restriction, because it's not necessarily permanent, because the fire marshal could change it if there's new technology, or it could change if the building changes. And it's not necessarily for use by Beacon. It's for a town service. So it just didn't strike me as a traditional type of deed restriction itself, but it still has to be an agreement that's binding on the town.
Are you looking at something that's also binding on any future landowners?
Yeah, it would have
So
to be,
run with
you
the
can
land,
have,
as you mentioned.
you can have contracts contracts without deed restrictions be binding on successors and assigns.
That's correct. I think you just get into whether or not the successors and assigns know about it and could be bound by it, and that's typically why we would have something on title that would run
You
with
can
the land.
record, you can still record, you can record it on the land record still, so, people have notice of it, but it's, so, and lots of approvals are recorded on the land records now, so I mean, that's, for that type of notice issue, I know that can be addressed.
I think the question would be whether or not that would constitute an encumbrance on the town property that would then fall under that provision of the town charter, but again, I won't dismiss it, I'll just look into it further.
Yeah, and frankly, that's not our call.
I understand.
I just, this isn't, a classic in my mind, permanent restriction for the benefit of, I don't know, it just seems a little bit different. But you definitely you need a consent of the owner that be maintained, so. Okay, so that's your direction.
Just one other quick, smaller item, I'll note that there are several sheets of the previously approved plan set that do not show that show the emergency vehicle pullover area, which under the prior set of plans straddled the property line, was partially on town properties, and have been pulled back and enlarged entirely on BHA property. So there are several other sheets of the original approval that need to be modified so that everything is consistent with respect to how that emergency vehicle pullover area is depicted on all the sheets of the plan set. And I can come up with something that requires that.
No, I think our resolution should incorporate the most revised plans that have been presented to us.
And possibly require revisions to other sheets that weren't submitted.
Yeah.
As revised in this.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so let's go on to, so in terms of, our deadline on this is November 8th, right?
November 8th. We did, if the commission would like to, try to do something before November 7th, which is very close to the deadline, just in case of some kind of weather event or other issue. There's the possibility of using this room for a special meeting on October 30th, which is the Wednesday, the day before Halloween. The room's also available on Halloween, but so that's another option if that's necessary. I just want to throw that out there as something commission may want to consider.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Joe's out of town.
I'm out of town that week.
Okay,
All right.
we'll just get it done.
Okay.
No
What-
weather events.
Yeah.
We still got the week in November, if we got to call an emergency meeting.
We could do something also the same week as the meeting on November 7th. So we could also look at,
We can also ask for an extension. See
could
what the
ask for an
applicant does,
extension. Yeah.
If it turns out November 7th, we need to find something.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
sure the applicant would be generous.
All right. Thank you. We will get to work.
Okay. Okay, so that's item number one. Item number two is a zoning map amendment for Bourbon Drive, for which we have a public hearing scheduled for November 21st. And item number three is Summit Place, for which we also have a public hearing on November 21st, and that also the zoning map amendment for Summit Place also for November 21st. So that's it for the old business. Also on our new business, item number one was going to be an informal discussion for Anchor Reef PDD modification, proposed Mariner's Landing. And I think that's been tabled, so we're not going to go forward with that, right?
Correct.
And then item number two is a time extension for Gould Lane. What's that about?
You may recall back, I believe it was in March, there was some discussion at the commission about whether this application should expire on this past March of 2019, or this year, or if the approval ran 5 years from October 16th in 2014, which was the date of the settlement modified approval. I believe the consensus of the commission at that point, back in March, was that it ran through to October 16th, which was yesterday. Prior to that day, on October 11th, we received a letter from Timothy Herbst, who is an attorney representing Donmar Development. He is requesting, on behalf of his client, a 3-year extension of the time period to complete the subdivision. I did get an email from Michael DeGioia, who is the representing Donmar Development. And if you give me a second, I will pull that up on my device here and read it to you. He says, he's addressed it to me, he says, pursuant to our conversation regarding the subject, we seek an extension of the approval as we are approximately 1/3 sold and built out in the project. Despite the fact that the original approval was several years ago, he says in 2012, I think it's 2014. We acquired the project many years later. As such, we asked the commission to grant us an extension for purposes of finishing the project. Please not hesitate to contact me, and he provides his phone number, and he wishes us a nice evening.
Okay, so we have authority to grant the extension, right?
Yes.
What's the?
I believe, my understanding is that if the request comes in prior to the
Right.
expiration of the approval, that you can extend it, but.
Yeah, it
This is an
runs
argument
from, they have initial 5 years, and we can grant up to another 5 years.
Correct.
Okay, and
So
they're
3 is
requesting
within
3
5,
years on the
absolutely.
second, so forth, right?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions or comments, anyone? It's a 3-year request for an extension, 3 years to complete it. So I'll make a motion, sure, go ahead. What do you want?
This isn't really addressing the extension, and I know this isn't a public hearing either, and my name is Lauren Brown, 35 Flying Point Road. I'm just curious if you're all aware of I can't even find the words for it, the completely egregious violation of the inland wetlands permit of this project.
Yeah.
If you had been there this morning after the rainstorm, the president of the Branford Land Trust went out and he estimates that since the matter was first brought to the commission's attention, something like 1/2 ton of sediment has washed down the hill. I mean, I just wanted to know if you're aware of this.
Thank you. I had heard from the land trust, yeah, that their land trust is an abutting property owner, and
Right.
they've been having, and there's been some problems with that, and I hope Wetlands is
Yeah.
working on that.
And a large part of the issue was a condition of the wetlands permit was that the clearing be done in phases, but it wasn't. It was all
Yeah.
done at once. And so, okay.
Great, thank you. So, I mean, giving an extension helps them fix it. I mean,
It is unfortunate, but
Yeah.
actually in the last modification of the subdivision, I think the commission put in approval allowing the CEO to direct erosion and sedimentation control, which I know she's been active in working with the developer. I mean, it's been difficult considering so much of the site is open. There's, only so much that can
Right.
really be done, and certain severe weather events are going to blow through controls, and they put them back up, and we're out there making sure they do that, so
okay.
it's difficult.
Well, if you can informally emphasize that public and the commissioner are concerned that the erosion measures really be addressed and prevent the pollution, the runoff, and the mess that's going on out there.
I mean, they cleared
We'll
all
do
the
that.
trees, but they didn't plant any.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
they
it
could
would-
just throw some seed down and let it.
I mean, it wasn't supposed to be developed this way, that's quite correct, and it's very unfortunate. It's maybe perhaps something to look at for, our regulations as to how to make sure that that kind of thing happens rather than what happened out here.
With all that, is there a motion to grant a 3-year extension for this? Somebody?
So moved.
So moved by Joe. Is there a second? Second, John. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Just tempted to only give them one, so that we can,
Well,
if that's good behavior, then give them another 2.
item number 3 is James Primacerial. 80 Bradley Street, special exception for a two-family residence. We need a public hearing for that. What do you recommend?
It would have to be the second meeting in November. It can't be in the 7th, so it'd have to be in the 21st.
Okay. Okay, so we'll do that the November 21st. And then the next items, number 4, 5, and 6, all by the same applicant. Assume it's the same project, 292 Leeds Island Road.
Right.
And
Yeah, and we are getting a little piled up. We've got Center Place on the 21st, Bourbon Drive on the 21st, now Bradley Street, so just pointing that out.
What's the application? It's, do we know if this is complicated or not? It's a...
Maybe procedurally complicated. It's proposing, I believe it's 3 rear lots that would have their dog legs, if you will, come right out the same point on Leeds Island Road, so it would be a common driveway to serve all 3 lots. So then there is some property line adjustment with an abutting property, I think, that was part of a subdivision that possibly included this property originally. We just got this in about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, so we really haven't looked at it in any great detail. And then, of course, there is a special exception for each of the 3 rear lots, which I'm not sure if we can do that collectively. It has been submitted as a single application, but that may need to be individual approvals for each of the 3 rear lots. They're not identical, but I have to review that with the applicant's engineer.
What do you recommend for a public hearing? Do you?
I mean, I hate to put people off, but I think we're getting, a fair number of applications here, and there are other things waiting out in the wings as well, and I don't know if any of those would be site plans or things that, may be more critical to have on the 21st. I just don't know. So I guess I would suggest the first meeting in December.
And that's probably the only meeting in December, too?
That is the only meeting. It's the 5th.
Okay. So hopefully it's something we can act on that night? I don't know. Who knows? Okay, so you're recommending 12-5?
Yeah.
Okay, so 12-5 for 4, 5, and 6. And then 7, Nuzzo, accessory use, non-agricultural farm events.
Yeah, I mean,
What's this?
well, you
We
did the
adopted
zoning regulation amendment,
did the
which is
this is the actual.
effective as of, I think, this week, early Monday. I did review the application very quickly. It came in also the end of the day yesterday. It's incomplete in some respects. I mean, the regulations require a full site plan, and what has been submitted is basically a parking plan that was, I think, submitted with one of the prior zoning regulation amendments. The applicant hasn't requested, they could request a waiver of some of the site plan requirements, but that hasn't been, that's not part of the application at this point. I know we talked about, and they proposed in the regulation amendment, landscaping, and there may be a lot of existing landscaping they can use along the property perimeter, whether you want to require trees within the parking lot as is typical or not, or you want to phase that in. I mean, these are all things that probably need to be discussed as part of the application. But at this point, we really have no information in the application about landscaping, lighting, and a lot of the other requirements of the site plan. They did submit a statement of use, and I have not really been able to look at that in any detail. And it looks like they submitted a general operating plan, which is also required by the regulation amendment. So I think it needs more work. We certainly need to at least go over with them and any professional they do hire. I think they contracted Criscolo, and the only change to the parking plan that they had previously proposed was that adding a small number of porta potties in the back of one of the buildings. So that's the extent to which they've involved any professional in preparing the plan as opposed to what they already had. So they did have Criscolo do a survey and identify the existing parking out there and so forth. I don't know if he's going to be engaged or not. I don't know how to really look at the application other than to identify all the missing pieces and talk with them about, okay, it's up to you, but one of the things I think was left undone at the regulation amendment stage was how many more events and what's proportional to the amount of site improvements, and if you're going to have a large number of events, are you getting into, even if it's accessory use, to where you would want improvements to the property, to the parking areas like lighting, like, I understand there's some lighting already out there and I don't know anything about it. Trees in the parking area, the things like, for example, the stand had, even though it's a small parking lot. They had a gravel parking lot, but they had landscape areas and they had traditional lighting for the parking area. So, I mean, those are all kind of open
The issue
questions.
now is when we schedule a public hearing. It sounds like it's
Yeah,
may
yeah, I mean, there's a
take
lot of
more than
outstanding
one public
questions. I'm
hearing.
sorry to go over that length, but
Yeah.
I guess I would suggest the 5th of December at this point because it's incomplete and I don't know, when they would complete the application. I'm hoping they would do that fast enough to have it be heard, but I think it'd be difficult to do by the 21st, possibly. So I don't know what Mr. Chris Cole's workload is, whether he's going to be engaged or not. I just don't know.
Okay, so you recommend 12/5?
I do.
Okay. So we'll do that one for December 5th?
Sorry to be so long-winded, but
Yes. Okay, so other business?
I really have nothing further to report at this point. I mean, there are other applications out in the wings. I could report that the proposed Hampton Inn to replace the Branford Motel received its height variance, so I believe they are ready to come into the commission. I don't believe there may be some wetlands on the property, but I don't think they're proposing any new disturbance in the upland review area, or the wetlands might be off property to the north. So I expect that to come in. And again, we have, Anchor Reef sitting out there, so
Great.
there are other applications pending.
Okay, thanks. Anything else anyone has?
I received an email about the common meeting between agencies. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, I do need to, I do want to mention, that I don't know if this is what you're talking about, I don't think so.
The ZBA and at the firehouse.
Yeah, there is a training that would be conducted by Bruce Hyde of UConn's Clear and Land Use Academy in this room next Wednesday, the 23rd at 7 p.m. So I think you all got notices, so.
Oh, that's a
it is.
training?
Yeah, it's a training. It's the basic roles and responsibilities training. I don't know if anybody's planning on going, so I'm trying to give him a head count because he wants to put packets together, so I know if some of you have been to the advanced training they've done up at their site, and
Is it for, I guess I didn't realize it was a training. I thought it was something else.
no, it's a training session. So I'm not hearing a lot of response. So I take it at this point that maybe nobody's planning on coming, and you'll let me know if
No.
you are, or maybe Marcy.
I'll try to come.
Okay, I'll put you down.
Will the lunches be as good as up at Adam?
I can't say, I can't vouch. I did work with Mr. Hyde for a number of years, and I know he's a very experienced land use planner.
I will most likely be coming just for the refresher.
Great.
So that was what the ZBA workshop was?
Yes. Is there anything else that you can think of, Rich, to mention?
No, but I'm sure we'll get some, applications in. Haven't heard anything specific.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Motion
Move to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by Marcy, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Joe. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.